Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In this video, I will describe the remaining types of the fuel cell. So, first of all, the phosphoric acid fuel cell. Phosphoric acid concentrated to 100% is used as the electrolyte in this type of fuel cell. We typically operate at 150 to 220 degrees Celsius. So this is the low temperature. At lower temperatures, phosphoric acid is a poor ionic conductor, and carbon monoxide poisoning of the platinum electrocatalyst in the anode becomes severe. The relative stability of concentrated phosphoric acid is high compared to other common acids. Therefore, the phosphoric acid fuel cell is capable of operating at the high end of the acid temperature range, that is 100 to 220 degrees Celsius. Phosphoric acid fuel cells are mostly developed for stationary applications both in the US and Japan. Hundreds of phosphoric acid fuel cell systems were produced, sold, and used in the field test and demonstration. There are some advantages as well as disadvantages of the phosphoric acid fuel cell. For advantages, phosphoric acid fuel cells are much less sensitive to carbon monoxide than polymer electrolyte membrane fuel cell and alkaline fuel cell. A phosphoric acid fuel cell tolerate about 1% of carbon monoxide as a diluent. The operating temperature is still low enough to allow the use of common construction material, at least in the balance of plant components. The operating temperature also provides considerable design flexibility for thermal management. Phosphoric acid fuel cells have demonstrated system efficiencies of 37 to 42%, which is higher than most polymer electrolyte membrane fuel cell system could achieve, but lower than many of the solid oxide fuel cell and molten carbonate fuel cell system. In addition, the waste heat from phosphoric acid fuel cell can be readily used in common commercial and industrial cogeneration applications. There are some disadvantages of phosphoric acid fuel cell. Cathode side oxygen reduction is slower than in alkaline fuel cell and requires the use of a platinum catalyst, although less complex than for polymer electrolyte membrane fuel cell, but still it requires extensive fuel processing, including typically a water gas shift reactor to achieve good performance. Finally, the high corrosive nature of phosphoric acid requires the use of expensive material in the stack. This is pictorially describe the function of the phosphoric acid fuel cell, that is the same as the polymer electrolyte membrane fuel cell. Hydrogen is provided on the anode side, which it decomposes into hydrogen ion and electron, and then hydrogen ion is passing through the electrolyte electron from the outer circuit, and on the cathode side oxygen is provided, which form water with combining with electron and hydrogen ion. Next type is molten carbonate fuel cell. The in molten carbonate fuel cell, the electrolyte used is a combination of alkali carbonates, which is retained in a ceramic matrix of lithium aluminum oxide. The fuel cell operates at 600 to 700 degrees Celsius, so it means that molten carbonate fuel cell are high temperature fuel cell, where the alkali carbonates form a high conductive molten salt with carbonate ions providing ionic conduction. At the high operating temperatures in molten carbonate fuel cells, nickel anode and nickel oxide cathode are adequate to promote the reaction. Noble metals are not required for operation, and many common hydrocarbon fuels can be reformed internally. The focus of molten carbonate fuel cell development has been larger, stationary, and marine applications. So, after the phosphoric acid fuel cell, molten carbonate fuel cell have been demonstrated most extensively in stationary applications, with dozens of demonstration projects either underway or completed. So, there are some advantages and disadvantages of molten carbonate fuel cell. For advantages, the relatively high operating temperature of molten carbonate fuel cell, that is 650 degrees Celsius, results in severe several benefits. No expensive electrocatalysts are needed as the nickel electrodes provide sufficient activity, and both carbon monoxide and certain hydrocarbons are fuels for the molten carbonate fuel cell, as they are converted to hydrogen within the uh, on special reformer plates within the cell, simplifying the balance of plant and improving system efficiency to the high 40s to low 50s. In addition, the high temperature waste heat allows the use of a bottoming cycle to further boost the system efficiency to the high 50s to low 60s. There are some disadvantages also. The main challenge for molten carbonate fuel cell developers stems from the very corrosive and mobile electrolyte, which requires use of nickel and high grade stainless steel as the cell hardware. The higher temperature promotes material problems, impacting mechanical stability and stack life. Also, a source of carbon dioxide is required at the cathode to form the carbonate ion, representing additional balance of plant components. High contact resistances and cathode resistance limit power densities to around 100 to 200 milliwatt per centimeter square at practical operating voltages. So, this is the picture which shows the working model of the molten carbonate fuel cell. In molten carbonate fuel cell, hydrogen is provided on the anode side, which it where it decomposes into electron and the hydrogen ion. This electron move into the outer circle and reaches the cathode. On cathode side, oxygen is provided as well as carbon dioxide is provided. This carbon dioxide combined with oxygen and the outside coming electron and form carbon trioxide or carbonate ion. So this ion pass through the electrolyte and reaches the anode, where it combine with the hydrogen and form carbon dioxide and water. Water is released outside, where this carbon dioxide is recycled and provided to the cathode side for further chemical reaction. So carbonate ion is the conducting ion. Next type is solid oxide fuel cell. The electrolyte in this fuel cell is a solid, non-porous metal oxide, usually zirconium oxide, yttrium oxide stabilized zirconium oxide. The cell operates at 600 to 1000 degrees Celsius. So this is also really high temperature fuel cell where ionic conduction by oxygen ions take place. Typically, the anode is cobalt zirconium oxide or nickel zirconium oxide cermet, and the cathode is cerium doped lanthanum manganese oxide. Early on, the limited conductivity of the solid electrolytes requires cell operation at around 1000 degrees Celsius, but more recently, thin electrolyte cells with improved cathodes have allowed a reduction in the operating temperature to 650 to 850 degrees Celsius. Some developers are attempting to push solid oxide fuel cell operating temperature even lower than this range. Over the past decade, this has allowed the development of compact and high performance solid oxide fuel cell, which utilized relatively low cost construction material. Concerted stack development efforts, especially through the US Department of Energy SECA program, have considerably advanced the knowledge and development of thin electrolyte planar solid oxide fuel cell. Now there are some advantages and disadvantages for about the solid oxide fuel cell. Solid oxide fuel cell is the fuel cell with the longest continuous development period, starting in the late 1950s, several years before the alkaline fuel cell. Because electrolyte is solid, the cell can be cast into various shapes such as tubular, planar, or monolithic. The solid ceramic construction of the unit cell alleviate any corrosion problems in the cell. The solid electrolyte also allows precise engines of the three-phase boundary and avoids electrolyte movement or flooding in the electrode. The kinetics of the cell are relatively fast, and carbon monoxide is a direct usable fuel as it is in the molten carbonate fuel cell. There is no requirement for carbon dioxide at the cathode as with the molten carbonate fuel cell. The material used in solid oxide fuel cell are modest in cost. Thin electrolyte planar solid oxide fuel cell unit cells have been demonstrated to be capable of power densities close to those achieved with polymer electrolyte membrane fuel cell. As with the molten carbonate fuel cell, the high operating temperature allows use of most of the waste heat for cogeneration or in bottoming cycle. Efficiencies ranging from around 40% to about over 50% have been demonstrated, and the potential for 60% efficiency exists. Even 60% plus efficiency exists as it does for molten carbonate fuel cell. There are some disadvantages. The high temperature of the solid oxide fuel cell has its drawback. There are thermal expansion, mismatches among materials, and sealing between cells is difficult. In the flat configuration, the high operating temperature places severe constraints on material selection and results in difficult fabrication processes. Corrosion of metal stack components is a challenge. These factors limit stack level power density and thermal cycling and stack life. Here, this slide shows the figure of the direct methanol fuel cell. This is another type of the fuel cell in which methyl alcohol is methanol is used, or the methyl alcohol is used as a fuel, and from which the hydrogen ion is obtained, that is passing through the membrane, and the ultimate chemical reaction is that oxygen combined with hydrogen and the electron and form water. So this slide shows the working principle of the direct methanol fuel cell. This slide shows the a figure for phosphoric acid fuel cell, alkaline fuel cell, solid oxide fuel cell, and molten carbonate fuel cell. This is another slide which also shows the methanol fuel cell working, right? So all these slides show how these fuel cell work. So till here, all the types of the fuel cell complete. So thank you very much.